What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 283 of Hashtag AskGSM here today for Wednesday, May 1st, 2019. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with a hashtag AskGSM. We have Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section of this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So, May is finally upon us. Today is the first day of May. So much going on this month. It's going to be a very, very, very busy month. Not even taking into account I'm graduating in a week and a half. I'm done with my graduate program next Saturday, which is pretty cool. But not even that. So in 3 weeks from now, or rather 2 weeks, I think, from Sunday, Alexis and I and her brother, as well as Jason and his girlfriend, we're all going to be at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Yes, we were just at WrestleMania like a fucking month ago, but it's here in Hartford, so I'm not passing up that opportunity. We are going to Money in the Bank, which is super exciting. And then I'll be at Double or Nothing. Literally days later, less than a week later, I'm going from Hartford to Las Vegas for the first time with Mr. Marceau RJ for the awesome AEW Double or Nothing pay-per-view. So I'm super psyched for that. Money in the Bank in a few weeks. I'm sure there's more I'm not thinking of. Obviously, Alexis's birthday is coming up pretty soon as well, towards the end of the month. But it's going to be a pretty stacked month, if I do say so myself. But let's get started here with your questions, first and foremost. With Facebook, let's start with them. Andrew B. from the Facebook machine. His question was, can you recommend any good wrestling autobiographies? I think I've read most, but any out of left field would be fab to hear about. I've done all the normal mainstream ones. Yeah, I was like big on wrestling autobiographies years ago. Like I started I started reading them about a decade ago. I had to read a book for an autobiography for one of my classes on do it like a book report type thing. So I did it on Batista's. I read Batista's autobiography, which I have not read since that point, and that was a decade ago. But that was a really good book. I enjoyed Batista's autobiography. If you're looking, I think it's called The Animal Unleashed or something like that, which I know is also the name of his 5 DVDs, but his WWE DVDs. But check it out anyway; it's pretty good. I also read The $1 Million Man's Teddy DiBiase's, which was also very good. I read that about a decade ago as well. One of the first wrestling autobiographies I think I ever read. That was a good one. I had that signed by Ted DiBiase himself, which was cool. I read Goldust's a few years after that, another very good wrestling autobiography, talking about how he became sober and his road to recovery and all that other stuff. So that was a good book, well worth checking out. You said all the mainstream ones, so I'm assuming that would include, the Jericho ones. Jericho's autobiographies are easily my favorite. I love the Jericho books. I've read all 4 now. He's had 4. Yeah, he's had 4 books, and I've read them all, and they're all awesome. So definitely check those out if you haven't already, including the latest one. 4 is only a 4-letter word, or no is only a 4-letter word, or something like that. I had that signed by Jericho, too. So, again, great book. Check it out. The Mick Foley ones are also very good. I only read Lockdown, which I think was the most recent biography, aside from the St. Mick one, which was also very good. I had him sign that. It's about Christmas, but if you're not a Christmas fan, it might not be for you. But it does include some wrestling stuff in there, too. That was a good book. Lockdown was very good. I'm trying to think of the other ones that I've read. There are so many. Again, it's been such a long time since I've read any of them. But those for sure. I'm trying to think of other ones that I've read that I thought were really, really good, and I cannot, put the book down. The Rise and Fall, or rather The Death of WCW. Again, that's pretty mainstream. You've probably read that one. It's not exactly an autobiography. It's more about a company than any particular person. But it's great. I really enjoyed that book. I think Johnny actually lent that to me. John Napolitano actually lent that to me about a decade ago as well. That was a great book. The Rise and Fall of ECW, another good one. I think I had Tommy Dreamer and Mick Foley signed that one, which was super cool. Rey Mysterio's was good. That came out about a decade ago as well. I had Rey Mysterio sign that one. Man, I'm sure there's many, many more I'm not thinking of at the moment. I know Austin Aries had one released about 2 years ago. It is wrestling related, but it's more about him becoming a vegan. I enjoyed that book. I really liked it. I thought he did a great job with it. So I liked that one. Daniel Bryan's the one that came out about 4 or 5 years ago. Like The Road to Yeselmania. It kind of seems premature because there's so much that has happened since then, but it was still a good book. Justin Roberts, I would definitely recommend. I really enjoy Justin Roberts. I read that one about 1.5 years ago. He's an awesome dude, or about 1 year ago, actually. I finished it, I think. But that was a great book. Talks about all the inner workings within WWE. He was the ring announcer for the company for like close to a decade. So there's a lot of cool stories included there. Pat Patterson's was also really, really good. So check that one out too. I have yet to read the Jim Ross one. I got that for Christmas months ago, and I have yet to read it. I'm just way too fucking busy, unfortunately, nowadays. But I'm sure that one's good too. But those are some of the ones I would recommend checking out if you haven't already read them. At Bradbird R from Twitter, thanks to Brad for allowing me to use this week. He sent this in last week after I already recorded the video, so thanks to Brad for allowing me to do that, to carry it over to this edition. But that does remind me, as I say all the time, if you want to send in a question to the show, I would recommend doing it, really at any point, anytime after this video goes up. But the latest, I would say, is like early Wednesday morning, because I tend to record these videos around like 9, 10, 11 on Wednesdays. So if you want to be included in the show, be sure to send your question in before that through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, whatever. And if it's still timely, but you send it in after the fact, or if it's not like timely, rather, and it's like an evergreen question, like his is, I could always answer it the following week if you would like me to. But his question was, what's next for Bobby Lashley, and would a move to SmackDown have helped him at all? Honestly, I'm really surprised that they did not move Bobby Lashley to SmackDown in the shakeup. I thought he would have been a very good fit on that show, because SmackDown needs more heels. They just turned Kevin Owens, which is great. He can be the new lead heel on SmackDown for right now. They have Randy Orton, and they have Daniel Bryan, so they may not be as low on heels as I thought. Also Andrade, too. So I think they're doing okay. But still, I thought Bobby Lashley sending him to SmackDown for the sole purpose of breaking up that fucking trio of him, Baron Corbin, and Drew McIntyre, which is awful. And thankfully, McIntyre and Corbin have since teased tension. They weren't on the exact same page this week on Raw, so I assume the trio was done, and the only reason they were a trio was to combat the Shield earlier this year. So now that that's over with, we can finally move the fuck on from that awful trio. I do not know what's next for Bobby Lashley, though. He did beat The Miz on Monday's Raw. He wasn't on Raw the previous week, but he was on Raw this week beating The Miz after a distraction from Shane. I do not assume that Bobby and Shane are an item now, like Elias and Shane seem to be on SmackDown. But I don't know what you do with him. I don't know what's going on with Leo Rush. I'm not sure if he's been removed from the act, because he reportedly has a lot of heat right now backstage, and maybe Bobby doesn't want to be a part of that. I do not know. I like the act. I like the pairing a lot, but if WWE sees fit to move Leo Rush back to 205 Live or back to NXT because they don't think he mixes well with the main roster guys, then so be it. But I don't know where that leaves Lashley. The guy's a decent enough talker where he can, fare his own on the mic. I think he could do pretty well for himself. But, who do you have him feud with? Maybe Braun Strowman, but even though they have yet to have a full-fledged feud, I feel like I've seen that before in many other forms, like in six-man tag team matches, stuff like that. And so I don't know if a Bobby-Braun feud would exactly do the trick. Braun seems to be feuding now. Wait, what did Braun do this week? I don't even remember. What the fuck did Braun Strowman do on Raw this week? I have honestly no clue. I can't even... Oh, he was in the tag team match. He and Ricochet beat Corbin and McIntyre. Okay. But I would assume that... I thought that Strowman would feud with Samoa Joe over the United States Championship, but they could still do that at some point. So maybe coming out of Money in the Bank, they could do Lashley and Strowman. Doesn't exactly do much for me, but it's a thought. If it's not Strowman, I guess you could do Lashley and... Ricochet would be interesting. There is Rey Mysterio. I think Mysterio's feuding with Joe right now over the United States Championship because he beat Joe on Monday's Raw. So that's a thought, too. Him and AJ at some point would be fine. Him and Rollins, I feel like I've seen, too many times, so probably not. There's a few different people he can feud with. None of those feuds really do much for me on Raw. I really think he should have gone to SmackDown, to be honest with you. I think he would have been a way better fit on SmackDown. I thought he was a good fit for Raw when he first came back to the company about a year ago, and he was. But as long as Corbin, McIntyre, and that whole fucking cancer trio is on Raw, I don't think he's going to go too far. And I like Lashley a lot. But I don't really know what's next for him. A feud with The Miz is what I thought was next for him, but it seems like Miz will continue to feud with Shane, which is probably better because Miz and Bobby, based off the match they had on Raw, don't really have much chemistry. But he really, in my opinion, should have gone to SmackDown for sure. At Jeremy8911's got a couple questions here. First one being, with the lack of depth in the SmackDown Tag Team division, do you think WWE should move the Lucha House Party to SmackDown to help the Tag Team division and give them some more Latino stars from when SmackDown moves to Fox? So yeah, that was one of the reasons, reportedly, why Andrade was moved back to SmackDown, was because Fox felt they needed more Latino stars on the show, which is completely justifiable. It's completely understandable. I don't know why they moved Andrade in the first place, if they probably knew that would be a factor, and his relationship with Charlotte behind the scenes. So I don't know why they bothered to move him to Raw in the first place, only to move him back a week later, but whatever. So, yeah, Lucha House Party on SmackDown, I don't mind it. SmackDown, their tag team division, I thought was doing very well for itself, for the most part, over the last year, because they had a lot of tag teams. They had New Day, Bar, Bludgeon Brothers, the Usos. They had a lot of tag teams. The Club, which they didn't really do anything, Gallows and Anderson, but they were there. SmackDown at this point has no fucking tag teams. Even the New Day isn't really much of a tag team. I mean, they are, but Kofi Kingston's the WWE champion, and I don't think Big E and Xavier are going for the tag team titles anytime soon, with Big E being out hurt. So there goes the New Day. The Usos went to Raw. The Viking Raiders, they got called up to Raw, not SmackDown. The Bar got split up in the shakeup. Who else did SmackDown have? I don't even really know. What were the teams I mentioned again? The Bludgeon Brothers are no more. Harper's on his way out, but he might not even be brought back to TV, and Rowan's doing his thing with Daniel Bryan anyway, for when Daniel Bryan comes back from injury. They don't really have any tag teams. The Hardys. They had the Hardys, and the Hardys got hurt. Jeff Hardy got hurt. They had to relinquish the tag team titles last night. They don't really have any other tag teams beyond that. They honestly really do not. They have the fucking B team. Who gives a shit? Who fucking cares about the B team? The Club also got sent to Raw. So again, they literally have like no fucking tag teams. And that is very alarming. They have, I think, Nakamura and Rusev. Who gives a shit? Who cares? So yeah, I guess that would help a little bit because they're not doing anything on Raw anyway. They got beat by the Viking Raiders this past week. But it's not going to help the SmackDown tag team division. It's not going to improve the tag team scene tenfold. Because the Lucha House Party have been branded as losers on Raw. They probably should have been called up to SmackDown in the first place, so they can continue to wrestle. I mean, they're currently making the rounds. They're at the Raw tapings and the SmackDown tapings because 205 Live tapes after SmackDown. So it would just make more sense to have them on fucking SmackDown if they're going to be on 205 Live anyway. So yeah, I guess that would help, but I don't really think it'll do much. Because the Lucha House Party, again, with the whole Lucha House rules and how they've been portrayed so far, they're losers. They're losers. So again, it would help, but it's not going to turn around the SmackDown Tag Team division. It's going to take a lot more than the Lucha House Party to make the SmackDown Tag Team division feel credible. They have to actually have a division. They actually have to have a division first in order for it to feel credible. So I take that back. Jeremy's second question. Do you see AJ Styles turning heel after Money in the Bank and the Club reuniting? That would actually be pretty cool. I could see AJ going heel. He teased it during Monday's contract signing on Raw. He hasn't been a heel in close to 2 years, and for good reason, because he's really over. But of the two, it seemed like AJ was getting more boos than Rollins was on Monday's Raw, and I think they did that by design. And I don't think Gallows and Anderson moving to Raw is a coincidence. Now, I had read somewhere in the last couple days that Anderson and Gallows were always pegged to move to Raw in the shakeup, but they didn't make the move official until this week. I don't know if I buy that. Even if that was the case, why the fuck bother with moving Gallows and Anderson where they're obviously on their way out anyway? What exactly does that solve? Nothing. They're likely on their way out of the company, so who cares anyway? Why should we give a shit about them being on Raw unless they were reuniting with AJ Styles? So, I thought they would stay on SmackDown and reunite with Finn Balor. I thought that would be a good idea, but they're obviously on Raw now. Make the most of it by putting them back with AJ. So, AJ and the Club, or rather just specifically AJ, he went heel, and the Club was already heel by the time they showed up in the company in the spring of 2016, AJ went heel right before Money in the Bank, right before his feud with John Cena, by reuniting with Gallows and Anderson. So maybe we see something similar 3 years later. I don't know if he would turn heel before then. Maybe at the pay-per-view, if he was to cheat to win, or to turn heel afterward, I don't know. But there's a very good chance of that happening. Raw has some heels, but they don't have like that one big great heel. Like that it could really be like, oh wow, that's a heel they can build around. They really don't have that. That leads to at Scarlet Ones, one of her questions, or one of their questions. I had mentioned this. I mean, I'll go out of order here because this was one of their questions, and it's a little later down the list. It's actually their last question, but I'll start it here. Is Baron Corbin the top heel on Raw? Yeah, by default he is. And that really scares me because Baron Corbin in the main event is a fucking cancer. It just does nothing for me. The guy is... I like Baron Corbin, don't get me wrong. The guy's a good heel. He's just not a main event level heel, at least not right now. Drew McIntyre can be that guy, but he hasn't been positioned as that guy yet. Shane... Fuck it, move on, no thanks. I don't want to see Shane as the top heel on Raw. And then there's Bobby Lashley, who I mentioned earlier, not even close. The guy wasn't even on TV for a few weeks, so I don't think he's the top heel on Raw. So yeah, maybe turning AJ heel is the answer, and they can turn, maybe, I wouldn't turn McIntyre face, but I don't know, maybe they turn someone else face and return, like a Samoa Joe. You know, Joe could be the top heel on Raw, but he's currently the United States champion, so that's not possible right now. But yeah, if they turn AJ, they would obviously have to turn someone else in return. But still, Baron Corbin being the top heel, unfortunately, he is right now. He's just being positioned that way, which has forced them to rely on a babyface versus babyface match at Money in the Bank with Rollins and AJ because they have no other heels that feel like credible challengers for Seth Rollins anytime soon. So that's probably why. At Scarlet One's next question. Any particular thoughts on the Sonic the Hedgehog 2019 movie? I noticed you were tweeting about the trailer. I think it sucks. I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, I did tweet about it. I was not very kind to the trailer. Maybe I should give it a chance. But based off what I have seen on Twitter and in reaction videos and stuff like that, some people are very excited about it, which I think is great. I'm not shitting on Sonic the Hedgehog. I like Sonic the Hedgehog. I played some of the games as a kid for like GameCube and Nintendo, shit like that. I'm not shitting on Sonic. The movie itself looks like it's completely unnecessary. And it's not just the trailer. The teaser poster for it, which showed Sonic having like human-esque legs many, many months ago, looked, oh God, what is that? I was almost frightened. And when they revealed what Sonic looked like in the movie, I was like, holy shit, this looks terrible. And again, it could have promise. It might be good. I'm not saying it's going to be bad. We don't know for sure. We really don't, obviously. I really just have no particular interest to see it, unless it was to make fun of it. I would give it a chance. I might. But people within my close social circle would agree that it looks like shit. Because I've been talking to people about it over the last couple hours, this past day, the last 24 hours, and everyone's like, that I talked to that are my friends, they were like, that does not look good. But I've seen other people say, like, you know what, Sonic the Hedgehog was such a big part of my childhood, I'm willing to give this a chance. It doesn't look great, but I'm going to go see it anyway. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone to see movies that I had a particular interest in, that I wanted to go see, that I enjoyed, but they weren't great movies. They were shit, because they were like my childhood brought to life. You know, I mean, the Muppet movies, I'm a big Muppet fan. I'm a big Muppets fan. The movies themselves may not have been that good. I thought they were very good. They got good critical ratings, I think, for the most part. So that might not be a great example. But you may think the Muppets are shit. You might be asking me, why do you like the Muppets? They were a big part of my childhood, and I thoroughly enjoyed the movies. So that might be your Sonic the Hedgehog, and I think that's completely okay. But based off what Sonic the Hedgehog looks like himself, it looks like shit. They should have just taken the animation version that you see in the games and stuff like that, and just applied that to the movie. Would have been that hard? Like, I know they wanted to do a whole fucking Christopher Robin-like shit in The Lion King where they make it look as real as possible, but it looks scary. Some things should not be made to look like they're real life. Sonic the Hedgehog is one of them. The story itself, I don't know. I might go see it just to give it a chance and or to make fun of it, but beyond that, it's not a movie that I'm looking forward to at all. There are so many more movies coming out this year that I'm way more excited. Like even the fucking Pikachu movie looks better than Sonic the Hedgehog. And it's essentially the same thing, where it's like this cartoon thing that you kind of grew up on, and they brought it to real life. But all the Pokemon look great for the most part, and they largely they didn't try to make them look like they were real life. They were, kind of digitized and made to look the same way that they were in the original shows and in the comic and, stuff like that. They didn't do that with Sonic, and it just looks bad. And for everyone talking about, I don't agree with this, but for everyone saying, oh, it has Jim Carrey in it, so I'm going to go see it for Jim Carrey. You know what? It's cool that Jim Carrey's still doing stuff in 2019, but I cannot name a single good movie that I have seen him in. I enjoy Jim and Andy, but beyond Jim and Andy, which was a fucking documentary, beyond Jim and Andy, I have not seen Jim Carrey in anything good. I cannot recall anything good with Jim Carrey in it since like Bruce Almighty 15 years ago. I loved him as the Grinch in the original, not the original, but like the remake in 2000. I love that movie. I thought Jim Carrey was great in that movie. I love Jim Carrey in, Liar Liar, The Yes Man, stuff like that. I think he was in, what did I watch with Jason recently? The Cable Guy or something like that? With the dude who plays Inspector Gadget, whose name escapes me right now. The guy from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Mike Broderick, isn't that his name? Or not Mike, Matt Broderick, I think. Matthew Broderick. I enjoyed all those movies. 2019, I just do not find him funny. I think the last big movie that he did, that he starred in, was Dumb and Dumber 2. That was 5 years ago. And it was probably so bad to put him into hiding for the last 5 years because it was fucking terrible. So again, we'll see. But just because he's involved, okay, Jim Carrey's back, like, okay, he was a part of good movies 15 years ago. Doesn't mean he's going to make this good. So we'll see if they could do it justice, but I do not have high hopes, to say the least. Their next question, how do you feel about Backlash being replaced by Stomping Grounds? The name is shit. It's awful. I like Backlash a lot more. But the last couple of Backlash pay-per-views have been terrible. Last year's was one of the worst pay-per-views I have ever seen. The year before, it wasn't too great either. It was better, but ending the night with Jinder Mahal winning the WWE title is not exactly my definition of a great pay-per-view. So you know what? Who cares? It's just a title at the end of the day. Everyone's, bring back Judgment Day, bring back Unforgiven. You know what? I completely agree. But the titles don't mean anything. I would rather remember those pay-per-views for what they were and what they are than bring them back and make them terrible. It's just the name at the end of the day. The only reason why those pay-per-views were so great back in the early 2000s was because the creative was a lot better in the early 2000s in more ways than one. I'm not a big Attitude Era fan, and I can even tell you that these Backlash shows were way better in 99, 2000, and 01 than they have been in 2017 and 2018. The 2016 installment I thought was great. The first SmackDown exclusive pay-per-view of the new brand split a few years ago. I love that show. Beyond that, though, the other Backlash shows were fucking terrible. Now, when I think Backlash, I think Jinder Mahal winning the WWE title. I think a Roman Reigns Samoa Joe main event, which was lackluster beyond all hell from 2018. That's not what I should be thinking of when I remember Backlash. So it's probably best they just keep those names in the past and they don't bring them back and they come up with new pay-per-views that they can shit on. It's just a name at the end of the day. And that was never more accurate than with the Great Balls of Fire show in 2017. Oh my God. People shitting all over that name when it was first announced that the July pay-per-view that year would be the Great Balls of Fire. And rightfully so. I was among them. One of the worst pay-per-view titles I have ever heard. I know it's based off a song from many, many years ago, but it's still a terrible name for a wrestling pay-per-view. That being said, it was one of the better pay-per-views all year. You go back and watch that show, that was one of the better Raw exclusive events of the brand split. And I will forever say that. I thought that was a very, very good show. But the name was terrible. So again, at the end of the day, it's just the name. As long as it's a good show, and I think many other people agree with that, because I didn't see many people shitting on the name on Twitter this week. They were like, Stomping Grounds, who cares? Like, okay, it's not a good name, but I'm not going to sit here and go off on it, just because as long as the creative is good, and it's an engaging card, and it's exciting, then who cares what the fuck it's called? Their next question, how do you feel about the Usos and their adjustment to Raw? And this was in reference to the Usos, first of all, singing their way to the ring on Monday's Raw before their match with Gallows and Anderson. So that happened. And then the music stopped, and they were kind of confused, and they started to sing again anyway, and the music played again. That was because they were trying to go to commercial, and they didn't really know what the fuck was going on because they don't really do it that same way on SmackDown. I think Raw's formatted a little differently that way. It was funny. It was a funny botch, I guess you can call it. But I'm not exactly a fan of them singing their theme on their way to the ring. I wasn't blown away by that. I could see why some people would think it's cool. It just kind of reminds me of R-Truth and just being a glorified mid-card act. I think the Usos are better than that, and they're not great singers anyway. But who am I to say? Because I'm a terrible singer myself. But yeah, it was just kind of the wrong song to sing to. It was. It's not like it was a song that people would be like, oh, singing to in the crowd anyway. I've never seen anyone sing to the Usos song, but it's great. But I've never seen anyone be like, oh, down, sing. They want like the whole crowd singing it. I've never seen that be the case before. So why start now? I feel like that's something just to fucking do something. Like the whole dumb Ricochet sound in the beginning of his entrance, or the creaking in the Aleister Black entrance. Stuff like that being completely unnecessary. But yeah, so far, so good for the Usos on Raw. They beat Gallows and Anderson. That's more important. But the whole singing shtick, I'm not exactly a big fan of. But yeah, the segue from that to commercial, I thought it was awkward, but in a good way. Like in a funny way, because they kind of fucked up, or the company fucked up, or whatever. Which leads into the next question. Building off of that reference, how do you feel about the WWE's entrance, ad break, begin match routine, and how it affects the show's pacing? For example, Naomi and Alexa even had an entire episode of Firefly Funhouse in between their match segment. I've never understood that. So they'll show people's entrance, and they'll have them in the ring. They go to commercial, and they come back, and they start playing like backstage promos or shit like the Firefly Funhouse, which I loved this week. I thought it was great, but doesn't it look stupid to people in the arena when you have Naomi make her entrance, Alexa Bliss make her entrance, and they're just standing there like a bunch of goofs watching the screen for something that has nothing to do with them whatsoever. In the dark, they're just standing there doing nothing. The lights go back on, they have their match. That to me just seems so unnatural and so fucking dumb. I don't know why they do that. It's so inorganic. They've had the same routine talking promo to kick off the show, immediate match, blah, blah. Like, it's so passé, for lack of a better term, and so formulaic, I guess might be a better term, that's why a lot of people do not like Raw, because it's so fucking predictable. You watch 3 weeks in a row, you can predict everything that happens, boom, 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 one after another. I don't know why they do that, and it ruins the show's pacing. 3 hours is tough to fill anyway, but then again, ask the Avengers, and they'll tell you how great a 3-hour, event can be if done right. With no commercials, by the way, but nonetheless. Could you imagine a 3-hour Raw without commercials? Which, I guess commercials, it would be better without commercials. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure. I feel like it would drag a lot more. But the commercials aren't the issue. It's the placing of the commercials. In the middle of the match, right after a match starts, in the middle of the entrances. Why the fuck do you do that? No other wrestling promotion does that except for WWE. And it's so annoying. It doesn't make me want to I can't wait to see this match start. It just gets me out of the moment and makes me want to not care. That's what it does for me. Maybe you might be different. For me anyway, when they cut away from a match, or cut away from a match right after it starts, it ruins the flow of the match and the entire show. And they've been doing this for years. It's not like it's a new phenomenon, like when they were putting up the words of everything people were saying about a year ago, which was so obnoxious, and that quickly died because people realized it was stupid. This has been going on for a long time, and they have yet to adjust the formatting of their shows. You think they would have changed it by now, considering how low the Raw ratings have gotten in SmackDown too? You think that would have changed by this point? They would be doing anything to, maybe not anything, but they would be, desperate and willing to change with the times and kind of adjust how they, format their show to keep people tuned in for the remainder of the night, for the remainder of the episode. But they haven't done that yet. They've been doing the same thing for years now, and it's so aggravating because it just takes me out of the show and makes the show drag that much more. So the last question comes from @RJ_Marceau, my brother Mr. Marceau from the Twitter machine. His question was, why does WWE put the titles on the IIconics to just lose weekly? Has the lack of enhancement talent / local wrestlers increased the poor booking of champions and the 50-50 booking? No, it's not, because, it's not a lack of enhancement talent, and it's not a lack of local wrestlers. You could always bring in some local wrestlers. They had this phase a few years ago where they were doing this for people like Braun Strowman Nia Jax. NXT does this a lot, which I think is cool. I think it's very old school to bring in like jobbers and shit for people to beat. I think it's great. You don't, like, I can only see, for example, Jinder Mahal beat Kurt Hawkins so many times. Why the fuck would I care about Jinder beating up Kurt Hawkins? Who gives a shit? I mean, obviously a local athlete would have even less credibility than a guy like Kurt Hawkins, and they obviously wouldn't win, but it looks way more impressive to put a local athlete in there with a guy like Jinder, even though he sucks, which I got to get that in there. It looks way more impressive to have a guy like, Jinder beating a local athlete than it does beating a loser that we don't care about. We don't care about the local athlete either, but they're allowed to get way more offense. Because with the jobber, the job matches, the squash matches, usually the jobber has some flurry of offense. With the local athletes, they almost never get any offense in whatsoever, and it makes that wrestler that they're building up look that much more impressive. And they were doing that for a while when they first brought back the brand split, probably because the Raw and SmackDown rosters weren't fully fleshed out yet, so they had to rely on local athletes to get other people over. They've kind of moved away from that in recent years. Not that they've moved away from it entirely, because they did it last night with Shane and Asuka, actually. They had Shane and Asuka beat some local tag team. The IIconics actually beat, ironically enough, a local tag team 2 days after WrestleMania. But it has nothing to do with local, lack of locals or lack of enhancement talent or whatever you want to say. It's the fucking creative. They just do not care about the IIconics to the point where they're going to book them to look strong and feel like credible champions. They lost 4 or 5 matches in the span of 2 or 3 weeks in April. Like they lost to Naomi, and then they lost to Bayley Naomi. They lost to Sane, and then they lost to Sane, Asuka, Bayley, and Ember. They lost all these matches, and people cannot possibly care about those titles when they lose as frequently as they do. And the promos are another issue. I talked about that before. The promos, them on commentary almost gave me a migraine. Holy shit, they are so annoying, and not in a good way. They are so bad when it comes to shit like that. Thankfully, the match with Sane and Asuka squashing those local athletes was short and sweet. Because the commentary I could not listen to anymore with those two on it. It was so bad. People say that about the New Day and how annoying they can be on commentary. The IIconics is 10 times worse. But yeah, there's no one really here to blame than WWE themselves for booking the IIconics like shit. I like the IIconics, but when they're portrayed in a way where their material sucks, they come across as obnoxious, and not in a good way, to the point where I just want to kind of click away from the channel. I want to just change the channel. And they're made to look like losers every single week. It makes me care about them a lot less. And I'm not as big of a fan of them as they were even when they were in NXT or whatever. So it's not like, oh, do they need more jobbers? Do they need to bring in more local athletes? Yeah, they should. But that's the booking, though. I think that's what you mean. I'm sure you're not saying that, oh, they should hire more jobbers or something like that, or that they have a fucking roster that has like 100 people on it. There's people that never make TV that they could use for making the champions look better. There's so many people on these rosters that they're not using. Why not bring these people in just to lose to the champions and have them, give them a good showing in defeat? Whatever happened to stuff like that? NXT does it all the time. I'm not sure why it's taken so long. It's taken WWE so long to grasp that concept. And they'll do it every now and again with certain people. But when it comes to people they don't really have much invested in, like the IIconics, they'll be like, 50-50 booking's okay. Having them lose every week, it's fine. They're still the champions. That's such a bad mentality because it makes the titles look like shit. Why are they champions if they lose all the time? And the people that beat them don't get a title shot most of the time. So why should I care? I just don't understand that. But yeah. So I don't really think it's a lack of enhancement talent, or that's what they should be doing, is putting people like the IIconics up against jobbers like Liv Morgan, Mickie James tag team. Why couldn't they have had the IIconics be a tag team like Liv Morgan and Mickie James, two people who are doing nothing right now on SmackDown? Why not just do that? I don't understand. Why not have them lose or have them beat a pair of local athletes, even if they do it every week for a month? It's better than having them lose to Naomi and Kairi Sane and this team and that team, because it just makes them look like losers. And by default, it makes the titles look like shit, and they don't mean anything. Like, if someone were to beat the IIconics for the tag team titles, like Sane and Asuka, how much does it really mean when they've already beaten the IIconics multiple times and pinned them in different matches? Singles, tag team, 8-woman tag team matches. How much does it really mean? The answer is that it doesn't mean anything at all. So bringing in more local athletes would help, but at the end of the day, it comes down to WWE not doing 50-50 booking constantly. I hate the fucking 50-50 booking. If they have to do number one contenders matches every week, that's fine. But I hate the formula where they have to beat the champions to get a title shot. I feel like we see that all the time. I feel like we see that constantly with all the champions that don't mean anything. With the exception of the World Championships, they do that with the mid-card belts constantly. They do that with the tag team titles constantly. They do that with the women's titles constantly. They do it all the time. So it's pretty bad, and that is definitely something they need to work on. Because of that, the titles don't mean anything, and it makes people that much, it makes them less engaged in the product. Because why would they want to see people fight for certain titles that don't mean anything? Why should I care about Wrestler X beating Wrestler Y for this championship if that title has already been proven to be nothing more than a prop? But that's going to do it, guys, for today's edition of #AskGSM episode 283. Thank you guys for checking out the show. As always, be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section of this very video. I'll include your questions in next week's edition. So with all that being said, guys, enjoy the month of May. Have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.